Diva Carter Gale at Sportsline Sportsline on Scariff Bay Community Radio. Good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome once again to the Sportsline show here on Scariff Bay Community Radio on 88.3 FM and 92.7 FM and on the TuneIn app in association with Derek Credit Union. On today's show, of course, it can be nothing, only hurling. What a weekend we have in store. All-Ireland semi-finals, Clare against Kilkenny later on today in Croke Park, and Galway and Limerick in the second semi-final tomorrow. And who's going to be in the All-Ireland final? It's anybody's guess. We also have a bit of camogie this weekend as the Clare Junior and Senior camogies finished their round robin stages of the championship. So I'm joined, as always, in studio with co-presenter Pat McNamara, our guest on today's show. And first of all, as we're going to preview the Clare-Kilkenny game, we're joined by a man whose voice is known to everyone all over the world, a man who broadcast games for Clare FM many years ago in those historic days of 95, 92, 95 and 97. And what joy he brought to people all over the world is the one and only Matthew McMahon. Pat, Matthew, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Pat, first of all, we have to talk about the camogie. Clare, final group game later on today against Waterford, and in the junior game, final group game against Armagh, and they're probably more than likely already in the semi-final but have to play out the group game. The game against Waterford, you know, they're out of the championship but hoping to avoid that relegation battle.
Yeah, hoping to avoid relegation is right, Leo. After a promising few weeks there around the time of the Munster final, that when they had a brilliant display against a very strong Cork side down in Park Erin. Going to the second period of extra time, I suppose you'd have expected maybe things were looking really high up at the time, but I suppose, you know, it's a very competitive camogie scene nowadays. The likes of Dublin, Tip, you know, we know Waterford, Limerick are all tightening the gap on what we call the big three, Cork, Galway and Kilkenny, I suppose, and Clare, we thought, were on the way to joining the top three or the top four, but it's a struggle to get there, and they put an awful lot into it. But look, I saw Waterford beating Tip that day below in Thurles before the Munster final. They were very impressive, beating Tip that day. Big, huge pitch and kind of slippery conditions, and a huge crowd gathered in, not supporting Waterford, but they handled everything very well. So they're no pushover at all. So it's a challenge for Clare, a serious challenge. But being a home game, I suppose, Clare, I think with the backs to the wall, I think Clare will dig in, and I think they'll pull out the victory. I think you know, they know they have to, and I think they have enough quality and enough, maybe, you know, there'll be great home support considering this clash that's happening, which is a bigger issue should be talked about again in terms of, I know it's no responsibility of Clare people at all, but in the national scene, I mean, the Camogie Association want to get their act together, because this is just ridiculous. And I mean, I mentioned it because it's not fair to the Clare players. The management would love being Croke Park. It's not fair to the many people who'd like to go and support them in this vital game against Waterford if it was Sunday or another day. So, but look, I think they'll dig deep, and I think the fact that you know, the experience they've gained from playing so well against Cork and you know, good performances against Tip as well. A bit disappointing against a good Dublin team maybe, but I think they'll dig out a victory hopefully.
And the junior team side, is it Cavan they're playing up in Bethany Park?
That would be scary enough.
Yeah,
not just because of football.
At the moment anyway.
But they had a decent team last year, Armagh as well.
Yeah, but going to Cavan, you know, Cavan have already drawn with Tipperary.
Yeah,
so
I've seen I saw a little bit on YouTube and playing, I get afraid what they're playing, and do you know, some of these girls can play camogie, but again, our girls have a lot of strain, and with the seniors, and a lot of work has gone into them. So you'd be fancying Clare, but that's a tricky game enough. I think, you know, these northern teams, they love their camogie up there, and they put a lot of effort into it, and they'll be competitive, and you know, they'll fight as well. I mean that in the proper way.
Yeah, you want to watch
other ways as well.
So look, we
best of luck to the juniors.
Yeah, we wish the camogie the best of luck in both games today. But look at, there's only one thing in town today, and what a game we have in Croke Park later on this evening. Clare and Kilkenny, All-Ireland semi-final. As I said, we're joined here by Matthew McMahon. Matthew, 25 years ago in 1997, Clare beat Kilkenny in an All-Ireland semi-final and went on to lend Liam McCarthy back with a win over Tipperary. They came through the qualifier system that time. We came through the quarter-final this time. What's your thoughts going into the game, Matthew?
Well, most people would suggest the general opinion out there is that you're going to have, I suppose it's an opinion and a hope that you'll have a Clare Limerick All-Ireland final. People are waiting for more of the same at the Munster final, and even if that happens, I was talking to Ger Hegarty some night last week, and he said, like, you know, people could get very disappointed in the context that you can't get a repeat. You can get a repeat of the pairings, but you'll never get a repeat of the Munster final. Clare, to me, are a better team than Kilkenny. Will they beat Kilkenny? I don't know, because Kilkenny are Kilkenny. I mean, that is the problem. If you know, I mean, you could be better than them, but you want to be a good bit better than them to beat them. If Kilkenny win that, it wouldn't surprise me. There'd be no point in saying, "Oh God, you know, we got surprised, we got this or we got that." I mean, this is another Lions Den, and Cody has a lot of issues. I'm not saying with Clare, but he has, despite all he has done, he has a lot to prove. You know, that's what keeps people going, and he'll be mad to have a crack and get into an All Ireland and prove that he's still the king. Pardon the pun on the other king, but of course, Clare's situation was after the Munster final, and Ger Hegarty said this as well. You know, he said it was just obviously that he was mentally tired of her, rather than, you know, they proved that they weren't physically tired, and you know that mental exhaustion has now gone out of the system, and you know they finished well. Whether they win or they lose, I love the way they're going about their business. It's what we grew up watching. You know, they have tactics, but they're not bogging themselves down in tactics. I mean, they're letting hurl, and they're let hurl. They seem to be let hurl. They seem to be enjoying it. And the one thing that I really enjoyed was when I saw the boys being allowed to play with their club the other night. I mean, in modern times in Clare hurling, that's unprecedented. And I think, you know, I thought it was a good thing.
In fairness, Pat, Brian Lohan has the support of the Clare people behind him. And to follow on your point there, allowing the players to play their club matches, you know, what it says to the clubs, like, you know, they have clubs backed him, and he's gone back and you know, allowed the players back. And he allowed them to play other games we needed as well. So it's not the first time he's done it. Like, you know, he has really grown into this job as manager. As I said, he's a support of everyone. But the team are playing. It's like a throwback to the old times, really.
Yeah, well, I suppose Lohan, the manager, is in my mind the same as Lohan, the player, was. What you knew exactly what you got from him. You got honesty. You got 100% commitment. You got ruthlessness on the pitch in the right way, you know, to win the ball and to clear it. That time you could clear down the field without having to find a man. Sensible, tuned in, leadership, all the great qualities you'd look for. And that's the same in management. It is simple, and when I say simple, I don't mean that the ball, the game they play is simple, but it isn't overly complicated either in terms of trying too many plans and too many things and too many players programmed to have to do a certain thing in a certain position. They're allowed to think for themselves, I think, and at times there's some great ball being played up into the forwards. That's not always the case, because if you don't get space in the middle third, all the one how good you are planning these things, you're going to have to hit the ball under pressure. But you know, also he gives nothing to the media, only a couple of usual comments. These boys work very hard, and delighted for them. They got what they deserved. They're working really hard. They're a great bunch. He said very little outside of those two mantras. No complaining about referees. So he's really, really, I think, just a wonderful leader. Keeps the attention off Clare in a way from the public. But to go back to the match itself, you know, it's very hard to know what you'll get in terms of Kilkenny. You know you'll get the intensity, the tackling, the swarm tackling, and if a half chance of a goal in front of the goal is there, they'll bury it. However, there are 4 or 5 of their players, I think, aren't particularly wonderful players, in my opinion. They're the guys who could lift it today at Ronan, but you know, they have some of those players that some people wouldn't hardly know them. Will say, I won't mention players, it mightn't be fair, but we all know who they are. There's 4 or 5 players there that haven't an awful lot of seen or hurling done for Kilkenny in winning teams and winning trophies, maybe Leinster Championships. Leinster Championship is slightly bit devalued, I suppose, in recent years, because it's all about the All-Ireland first of all, and I suppose Kilkenny have lost twice already, but the one thing you know you'll get from him is an app from a Cody team, and this is Cody's great strength. Whatever 15 he puts out, and 3 or 4 or 5 that come on will die for the jersey. and they will work their socks off, and they will mostly do the right things. They're slightly lacking the ability, if not maybe more than slightly, of the greats who retired. You know, the JJ Delaney's, the Tommy Walshes, the Shefflins, the Eddie Brennans, keep going. However, if Clare aren't right, Kilkenny would beat us. But I great trust in Lohan and his backroom staff that's with him. You know, Sean Tracy and Ralph and Warren and those, and the S&C guys. You know, you'd have to great, because so far they have answered every question, and except for the Munster final, last few seconds of extra time, all through the year they've answered all those questions. So I'm expecting a Clare win, and I'm hoping for a Clare win, obviously. But you just don't know whether, if the new Kilkenny lads happen to rise to the occasion, they could make it very tough for us.
Looking at Kilkenny, Matthew, and Cody has been switching the team around, but it's the same faces. It's like Glenigan's ball, he's one in and one out. It's the same lads going in and the same lads going out. I'd say he's not too sure of what his best 15 is.
That may be the case, but Paddy was just saying there about no names and a lot of names. But I mean, you know, the man that has impressed me most in the championship this year above all counties is Mikey Butler. I mean,
a new name.
Sorry, a new name. I mean, Jesus, the man is unreal. I mean, and that's my worry about Kilkenny. That's what I came while ago, you know, Dangla was coming out a while ago, that, you know, when you put a jersey on these people, they can turn into something different, like Mikey Butler. I mean, Michael Kavanagh was a great cornerback. You know, he was as good as we ever saw.
He was, yeah.
You know,
tidy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But like this fella, if he continues, you know, if he continues as he is,
yeah, and savage sticky as well, yeah.
You know, he's going to be a Michael Kavanagh.
Yeah.
And Jesus, like, you know, trying to get in around him is not going to be simple. And you don't have to be a star in Kilkenny to become a star. You know what I mean? And that is what I mean. That if Johnny ended up coming in corner forward and you never heard of him before, he could destroy you.
Yeah, they have a habit of doing that.
Sorry, that'd been my worry.
And you're right there, Matthew, because if you look over the All-Irelands, Kilkenny have won over the last 20, 25 years, the fellow who got man of the match was often an unknown, an almost unknown, who suddenly blazed.
You're talking about Kieran Joyce coming back after being left off.
Go back to Christy Heffernan 40 years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah, 92.
Yeah, Walter Walsh
played against Clare in the 21 final round, didn't really stand out. I think he was man of the match 2 weeks after.
You can never underestimate Kilkenny, but if we get it right as we got it mentally and physically, but it'll be very hard for any team, Clare or anybody, to come with the same physicality as they did against Limerick. You know, it was a whole different package. Kilkenny, to me, are not as physical as Limerick. They're not as good a team as Limerick, but that wouldn't mean that they couldn't beat you by more than Limerick beat you. You know, that is always the worry. It's like walking into a house, around a house, and an Alsatian is inside, and you telling me that the Alsatian is quiet. Jesus, is like, I mean, I wouldn't take your word for it, Leo. You know what I mean? I'd still be worried.
Yeah,
I'd be very worried.
A good analogy.
And of course, Matthew, just pressure on Cody as well with everything that all the shenanigans that has gone on. You know, and he is he feels like he has to prove himself again. Probably.
Well, that's what I said to you a while ago. It's a case of the two kings, and I'm trying to be the mightier king of the two, and it would be a real V in his sleeve. I mean, he doesn't need B's in his bonnet, because he'll use anything to have a B in his bonnet. And I'm not criticising him for that, by the way.
Oh, no.
You know, I mean, the man has done. You cannot take away.
No,
what
you
he
cannot.
did.
No.
And I mean, he wants to win, and he will use anything he can to motivate his players. And you know, there is no argument about it. Whatever about Brian Lohan or any of the rest of them, you know, he has proven himself. Now, the fact that it hasn't happened for a couple of years, I'd write nothing into it.
No. And the other thing is, Croke Park is literally their home. It's their home pitch, and that's not the case for a lot of the Clare lads. A few of them have played 2 or 3 times in it, but like Cody's men, most of them have played there 15, 20, 25 times between minors, under 20s, and senior, and in Leinster games. So I know it's not a big deal, maybe.
And Pat, you're not buying into the fact that in Pat that when Clare in the past invariably hit Croke Park, they played their best.
Invariably do, and that's the balancing point. And just right, here's the balancing point. There's so much about this game that is kind of maybe driving you towards a very close match. Be honest about it. You know, I can't see Clare pulling away from Kilkenny Certainly, listen to the last few minutes, but up to then, because Kilkenny just won't let you. They'll compete too much in the middle third to win dirty ball and to not let you do that. I can't see Kilkenny pulling away from Clare either, because we have, as a mentally strong, as Matthew referred to, great mentality there, great physical strength as well, and great fitness there as well, as proven after the Munster final, and that comeback against Wexford when we finished very well in the game, even though we were tired. So, and the hurling is there as well. So, and the mentality, as I said. So, neither of them is going to pull away. So, it's going to be small little things. Let's hope we're not talking about referees' decisions again after the last few weeks. We've had enough of that. Let's hope on the pitch that Tony Kelly or Shane O'Donnell or Shane Meehan or Matt Rogers or someone does something, or maybe Cian Nolan or Young Hayes does something to win the game.
Or the other side.
Yeah.
That is one fair and square.
Or either of the other, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, you don't, but of course we have arguably the best referee in the game, with Fergal Horgan.
Well, sure, we have now, but what?
Let's hope we agree.
We have now, but this is before the game. What way will that situation be after the game?
Yeah.
Because there will be somebody giving out about him.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality of it is that it was generally accepted that Mr. Keenan had a great game in the Munster final. He lettered this, he lettered that, and he had the other thing. And if our information is correct, Mr. Keenan wasn't... or his performance in that game
didn't go down well
with the people upstairs, for the want of a better word. But having said that, I mean, in fairness to the man, the intensity of that game literally made it impossible. It made it impossible. There's all sorts of stories about umpires and whatever. I thought, when I spoke to Marty Morrissey that night, Marty thought he had a good game, like a lot of others. And I said to Marty, I said, I was at the game and I thought some of his decisions were shocking. On both sides, on both sides, shocking. Inconsistent, maybe more than shocking. But, he was the flavour of the month. And then you come along and there's two players who should have been suspended. They didn't. So what were they doing? And it's, you saw last Sunday, what happened in Croke Park with referees. People say that people are on about referees, but my God, the referees don't do much in cases to stop people talking about them. As for the GA themselves, what came out in the Sunday game last night, the GA talking about why the two boys were sent off for contributing to MLE. Wouldn't you shut your mouth not to be making a fool of yourself? Sorry, that's what happened to that statement. The two boys, Leo, they had no more to do with it than you and I had.
Yeah. And Pat, to follow on Matthew's point here, as we diverse away to the football for a minute, the national broadcaster, the Sunday game, which is, in my opinion, has too much to say on what's going on. It has a big say on running the association and running the different things at the moment. But to come out and say that, the referee's report didn't go in till Monday.
Well, it wasn't they said it. They gave the statement that was issued by the GA.
Right, yeah.
So my problem is with who, in the name of the divine God, came up and issued that statement to the Sunday game.
It leaves it up to desire.
It goes against all the GA's own rules and logic, because the referee's report is sacrosanct, supposed to be. That's usually a Monday, isn't it? The day after it all happens. Everything has to wait till that. But here was a decision made on the pitch with a bunch of officials all around the referee talking to him, and was the secretary of the board counties involved. So there must have been, it seems there was some agreement made. We'll give a red card to each side, and then the captain of Galway, Kelly, who was a very fine player and a clean player, after he was sent off, as was mentioned off air, was able to be in for the toss, to call the toss for the extra times. It's just the GA. Are their own worst enemies when it comes to discipline.
Even looking at the pictures on television, right? When Sean Kelly was told, he was obviously told he was gone.
Yeah,
he was. So look at distraught, right?
Yeah.
But within a couple of minutes, that just seemed to fall away.
Himself and the two of us didn't kind of tapped each other in the back and smile and say, "Look at." We'll take this for the team, and for the sake of the saving face for the GA. It looked like to me. And that's not right.
But then having saved face and done it, the GA came out and made a ridiculous statement. To throw the whole because thing. If that statement wasn't made, we wouldn't even be discussing this.
I think we all picked up on that.
But you said there, Paddy, just about the referee's report is the be all and end all.
Supposedly.
That is no longer the case, obviously, because all these CCCs, I'm running out of C's,
and Sunday games,
right. And then you have one CC looking at it, and the CHC comes on for another meeting. And I mean, the GAA suspension system is a farce.
Clumsy.
Yeah, it is.
It is non-existent, despite what they might try and portray.
Yeah, sure. We saw the same. You saw the same in a camogie game last year, where a certain player from Cork who got 3 games, and next thing she played the All Ireland final. It's just crazy.
That's right.
But going back to and we'll be taking a break in a minute. But going back to the Clare game and Fergal Horgan refereeing Metro, does that say that he's going to referee? No one knows what way the game is going to turn out or how it is going to pan out. There's no doubt to be physical and tough. What way does Fergal Horgan referee? Is the pressure going to be on him to dish cards early and to curb out the chance of anything happening? He's under pressure before he starts as well.
You said about issuing cards early. I have a bee in my bonnet over issuing cards early, because I think referees, a yellow card, in my view, is for something that's a toss of a coin. Are you going to be sent off or not? The first yellow card is being issued too trivially, and then if I come and hit you a decent smack afterwards, well, I have to get a yellow card. The yellow card should be the referee nearly saying to myself, Jesus, will I put him off or not?
Yeah, that was a horrible thing.
This is a 50-50 call. Is it red or yellow? Rather than just
is it yellow or nothing?
Or I pull and you passing you, or tripping you, and the next thing there's the yellow card, and then when some fella hits you a belt after, and you can't. I think Horgan has enough of sense, and if he doesn't, issuing the yellow cards is actually only backing themselves into corners. It's backing themselves into corners. I think he would have more control if he said to you, passing you, watch it.
Yeah, he does. So I think, in fairness to the man, I think he's a brilliant referee, and I think that's the approach he normally takes. If you're watching back in other games, you'd often see him. He says the Ireland. Yeah, there was a problem. Yeah, but if you watch him, you can often see him ticking.
Yeah.
He'd be ticking coming out. He might have a quiet word. You know what I mean? He doesn't be seen to do that.
But he does. You see, if you're in control, you don't have to take that much action.
Yeah, that's the word.
And if the players believe that you are in control, and that they're not going to get away with it, everybody will try and jump or skip.
To make a general point about all sports, hurling in particular, I think, thrives. The excitement for the audience watching or the spectator is that when the game is flowing, there's an excitement in you. Metro from commentating days with Noel Leo yourself. It's a thriller. It's a thrilling sport. Soccer can't match it. Rugby can't match it. And anyway, the rules in rugby are cut and dried, very strict to cut and dried, and there's replays in VAR, what you call it now, the TMOs, what we call them. Same in soccer now as well. But hurling is more, I suppose, natural. So the ref that's always blown in hurling, we hate him. Because he's the star of the show, he's stopping up the game, and he's ruling the flow, and his little nudges go, or he's pulling little nudges for nothing when it could go on. And then when Keenan does the opposite, it leads to trouble. So where's the balance? It's impossible to be a referee first. Then the other thing is, they are aware they have assessors above them to stand, and even the days they have an assessor on the stand every day. But then when they have the cameras of RTE and the Sunday game coming up that night, who would want to make a decision at all on the pitch? It's not easy, and you have to be sympathetic.
But it's also coming back to the situation. We have every sort of a coloured card now.
It's true.
We have everybody, referees, they're all mic'd up, the whole lot. I mean, we have done everything the rugby has done, that the soccer has done.
Near enough, yeah.
Bar introduce
video
TMO.
Yeah.
And I mean, let it be for a penalty or this or that or whatever. It'll be sorted on the spot, and 'tis the nonsense that's going on with people in the Sunday game and all the media, for the want of a better word, and everybody driving their own agenda, and then the GA compounding what they're trying to defend.
Exactly.
But you see, another point from that, you said it, and you said your own agenda, the agenda's there, Metro. If the Sunday game had 3 people from neutral counties commenting, you could accept their opinion on picking out tackles. But when you've a guy on it, say, and it's Dowling, who's a nice young fella and a nice guy and a fine hurler.
And a good
yeah.
But with all his mates that he played with, he's not going to call out his friends. He can't go back to Limerick on the Sunday game. He can call out 2 Clare lads.
Yeah, but Pat,
that's where it's going for neutrals.
In fairness to Beck Dowling, I think Dowling is a great analyst myself.
He is very good. I enjoy him.
You know, the abuse he got, that's totally uncalled for.
I agree 100%.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But he shouldn't be in that position.
Yes.
They should have had a Kilkenny man, a Tip man, or an Antrim man.
You're right. And Davy was on talking about a Clare match the time before that. And I said that case. And Davy said nothing wrong, by the way.
No.
But from RTE's point of view, he
does not make sense.
He shouldn't have been there.
Yes. No, exactly.
No.
Pat, Matthew, as you mentioned Davy, and we're going to be talking to our Kilkenny representative there in a few moments. We'll let you join in. Davy's father, Pat Fitzgerald, after 32 years as secretary of the adult board, he was obviously secretary in Rooney of underage before that. He has finally decided to call time. Hopefully Liam McCarthy will be in town before he goes. Your thoughts on the career of Pat Fitzgerald, Matthew?
Well, sure, 32 years is a mighty long time, as the song says. You know, he has served the people well. Like all stories, he wasn't popular with everybody. There's no point in I saying otherwise, because Pat knows that and everybody knows it. But that doesn't, what would I say, determine the man, because it's like the referees. You know, you can't be right with everybody. You know, he did things his way, and you know, he served the county well. Okay, some people would say that he served it with an iron hand, and would fault him for that. But if you served it with a weak hand and let everybody else run it, you'll be faulted as well. So you know, you're damned if you do. But like, he served it well. He gave it his best shot. And the one thing that I would say about Pat Fitzgerald at this stage is that he has his 32 years done, and I hope that he has the health to enjoy the time from now on, when he won't have, as the fella says, one crowd clapping him in the back and the other one giving out about him for their own agendas. I mean, that's life when you're in a public position like that. And the main thing at this stage is he has decided he's retiring, and I hope he has the health to enjoy it with his wife and his family.
Yeah, and we thank him for all he's done for Clare GA.
You're listening to Sportsline on Scariff Bay Community Radio, 88.3 and 92.7 in East Clare, around the world on scariffbayradio.com, and on the TuneIn radio app. Sportsline is sponsored by Derg Credit Union.
And now we're joined on the line by men who's very good to see on Scariff Bay Community Radio, as we're going to get the Kilkenny view on this weekend's Ireland semi-final. These men need no introduction. Adrian Ronan. Adrian, you're welcome once again.
Good afternoon, guys. How are you doing?
Hi, Adrian.
Adrian, what a weekend in store. You know, obviously we'll talk quickly about Galway and Limerick later on, but Kilkenny and Clare, you know, 25 years on, the last time that we played, you played in the semi-final. You came through the qualifier route, the quarter-final. Clare have come through that on this stage. What's the feeling in Kilkenny on this game, Adrian?
Yeah, sure, I suppose, like I said, the immediate thought, with a lot of the genuine Kilkenny supporters after watching Clare and Wexford, the excitement, the comeback out of Clare, I suppose, the excitement in that game, a lot of genuine people here in Kilkenny would have felt that this might be a match that we could struggle in. But as we're getting nearer, and it's now Saturday, and we're getting nearer to the game, I suppose there's a little bit more belief. We're still unsure. We know there's a team picked, but a lot of people think that team might be a dummy team in cases, because we've been doing that regularly in recent times. So I suppose a lot of people are hoping that the team that is picked has, I suppose, a Pádraig Welsh playing. I mean, it's a long time since we went to Croke Park without a Welsh playing for Kilkenny from Tullaroan. And look, I think a lot of us in Kilkenny that follow hurling and follow Kilkenny and enjoy Kilkenny hurling feel that we need a Welsh from Tullaroan involved just on the day. And I think if that's the case, I think we give ourselves a great chance. But at the minute, we feel that maybe the bookies might be right. Clare are definitely the farm team. They have the more, maybe the speed and maybe the more of the hunger. But look, you can't beat the experience, I suppose. People are talking about the shootout between Tony Kelly and TJ Reid, but there's more to the Clare team than Tony Kelly, and there's more to the Kilkenny team than TJ Reid, even though those two boys have carried them to a lot in the last few years. But look, there is the backup and the support group are very good.
Yeah, and I suppose, Adrian, we're looking at a previous form, and Wexford turned over Kilkenny, I suppose, in the round robin. Kilkenny still came back and won the Leinster Championship. Clare overturned Wexford, but Wexford gave them a very big scare. But obviously there was the mental recovery battle of coming back from the defeat in the Munster final. I suppose in all intents and purposes, Adrian, favouritism will go out the window as a game will take on a life of its own.
It will, but and you're right. But if you're looking at form, that's the only one we can really relate to in recent times. The Wexford match. Both of us have played Wexford in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Both of us, contrary to what people might want to think, that a lot of people said Kenny didn't have to beat Wexford in the park. We didn't beat him, we couldn't beat him, we were unable to beat him on the night. So that was a concern. Yes, Clare struggled against him a long time on the back of maybe a huge Munster final performance. So that's probably the only form that we can go on and relate to in recent times. So if that's the case, then there's not going to be nothing between us. It's going to be like any game, a lucky break. And, we can see it that happened the last day. Look, there's different tactics that Kilkenny might use based on what Clare and Kilkenny, when Wexford perform, and equally the same way with Clare. So the matchups will be interesting. But the only thing, I suppose, for us in Kilkenny, and I suppose we look back on the last 2, 3, 4 years, we've had a poor record against Clare in the last 2 or 3 years. And I know often that's happened down in Cusack Park, but we went down last year, the year before, with a very strong team to win a National League match, and we couldn't perform. So we don't have a brilliant record in recent times against Clare, and that's a little bit of a concern for us going down there. So look, I know where we're talking, I know who we're talking. The pressure's on you guys.
Good man, Adrian. But going back to Cody, Adrian, in modern times, the last couple of years, maybe 3 years, obviously the quality of players available to Cody haven't been as great as they had been 6, 7, 8 years ago when they were one of the best players I ever played. But there seems to be a good bit of uncertainty of who might start and who might be coming on. You mentioned it off air before when we were chatting, but that's something about Kilkenny that I think Cody likes to keep people guessing. Or does it say that there's maybe 10 or 11 players from midfield up that are of similar standard, and no one knows which one might start, which one might come on? Is there a bit of uncertainty, or do you think he knows exactly what he's doing?
I think there's uncertainty, because I think from all along we mightn't have, as you rightly said, the high quality that we had over the years, that X-factor player. But what we do have, to be fair, is we have 22 or 3 players that he can trust. And it's all based on the form. And based on the last 2 weeks of being in Johnstown Castle training, the form of a lot of lads has been very good in the last 2 weeks. That's the rumour coming out of camp. That's a huge plus for Kilkenny. The big rumour coming out of Kilkenny is Richie Hogan's perform. And will Richie Hogan make an appearance? And will he, or is it all just all hearsay in the last few weeks? But there's huge talk about Richie Hogan now. It's hard to believe that Richie can come out of nowhere. Yes, he's been training, but he hasn't played a full match for Kilkenny or even taken part. He's only been mentioned as a sub in the National League. He has made no appearance. But there's huge talk about Richie Hogan. There's no doubt in the man's class. But look, 35 years of age, can he make a part? Could he make a part? Look, we know what his contribution was against Galway 2 years ago. The man is a genius. But look, in the modern game, you're really on top of your game. So look, in that case, Kilkenny is, I think it's more about the uncertainty, because we have, as I said, a lot of players hitting and missing, and maybe misfiring in the last few weeks. So that's where the uncertainty is. But be warned, the last 2 weeks, the form has been good. The rumours coming out of the camp has been good. The only downside is Fogarty going to be right? He's a Cody fan. Cody's a big fan of Conor Fogarty in the middle of the field. Will he play? Will he not play? He hasn't trained in the last 3 weeks, and as I said, he has a vital role to play for Kilkenny under the radar in the middle of the field. And a lot of lads were wondering who will pick up Tony Kelly. If Fogarty's available, I think he might be the man to pick up Tony Kelly, not the one that everyone is talking about in Kilkenny.
And before I just hand over the lads to Matthew and the lads, one last quick one as well, Adrian. After the Wexford game, I think that the feeling in Clare anyway was that Cody was watching that, and he was going to have Walter inside and TJ Reid inside, and they'll be raining these missiles from on high in on top of our full back line, who didn't deal well with McDonald and Chin. But you don't necessarily see it that way, or that Cody sees it that way either.
Again, look, he's a fan of Route 1, there's no doubt about it. And I suppose the knockers here are all afraid that that's what we're going to go back to. Look, Lee Chin and MacDonald caused Clare huge problems. MacDonald and Lee Chin caused those huge problems in the park. So both sets of full back legs mightn't love the high ball in this case. Do I expect Kilkenny to rein in high balls on top of the Clare full forward? And yes, I do. I might, listening to the rumours again, expect TJ Reid to be there for a while and Pádraig Welsh maybe beside him. And that's, again, I mentioned at the very outside. I think the role of Pádraig Welsh, whatever his role is going to be, I think is vital. I think the man is hurting badly. I think the Welsh family are hurting badly. They've given so much to Kilkenny. And he hasn't been seen the last 2 or 3 months or last 2 or 3 matches. And his form and that hurt that you carry in your bag, I think it's vital to Kilkenny. And I think I'm hoping, maybe I'm just hoping, but I think Pádraig Welsh is going to have a bearing on this match, and I hope it's a good one for Kilkenny.
Yeah, I'm just getting worried there, Adrian, listening to you, because in relation, you obviously, like an awful lot of people, have great regard for the Walshes, and I mean, their record speaks for themselves. But a wounded cat or any animal is a dangerous thing. And you're there talking about Adrian Ronan. Sorry, you're Adrian Ronan, but you're talking about Richie Hogan. Richie, he might be 35 or 6 or 7, but as a Clare man, I prefer this evening to see Richie sitting in the stand than coming onto the pitch at any stage, because I wouldn't trust him from here to the microphone that I'm speaking into. And I mean that in a decent way, Tim, sorry.
Yeah, no, and I'm a huge Richie Hogan fan. I always have. I dealt with the man for 4 or 5 years. And you're right, class is permanent.
Yes.
Form is temporary. And look, if the rumours are true, just these two boys have had no appearance, have had no bearing on the Leinster Championship. And you rightly said, a wounded animal and a wounded cat is a dangerous animal. And just these two guys, if they have
pride,
I'd love to see the two of them playing. If the two of them are playing or have a big decent part to play, I think he'll give us a great chance. I hope I'm right.
And just before you come on here with us, we were just talking, and Paddy here said about, that there's some names in the Kilkenny team that may not be very, very well known. And I said to him at that stage, well, that would mean nothing to me, because we have seen that in the past, and they mightn't be known this evening, or now as we speak, but they could be known by 6 o'clock this evening, and there could be another star shining somewhere around Hill 16, and that'd be what. But the one thing, just coming from your vibes there, I said before you come on, I wouldn't trust Kilkenny as far as I throw them, as in fact, believing that you could beat them, because you could be better than them and they could still beat you.
You could, but look, I'm a bitter, twisted Kilkenny man. In 1997, the same happened in a semi-final. We went into a semi-final against Clare, and we lost our full-back and our centre-back just before the throw-in. And if Clare had to lose the Sparrow and Brian Lohan that day before they played us, they wouldn't have bet us either.
Yeah.
We lost the 2 boys, and Clare went on to win the All-Ireland in 97. So we don't forget these things. So, these Kilkenny lads in a semi-final, talking to the players, and look, Clare are favourites. The bookies have it right. The best in performance, they're the favourites, rightly so. They've had the best performance. They've been brilliant against Clare. But you're right. To be foolish for anyone to write off Kilkenny in Croke Park. And you must remember, this Kilkenny team have underperformed last year against Cork in an All-Ireland semi-final, this group. They've underperformed against Tipperary in All-Ireland in 2019. They've underperformed in 2020 against Waterford. And that group will be reminded of that all week. So, again, whether that's enough, I don't know. But we might just be coming in under the radar a little, because the favourites tag is with Clare. That might be something Clare might be comfortable with. This group of players wouldn't have had that favourites tag all year. No. And they might be able to carry it well. That's the bit of hope we might be hanging on to, that we're coming in again. And, as proud Kilkenny men, underneath it all, we might be saying, hold on now, how the hell are we coming in under the radar here? It might suit us, just might suit us. But going back to what I said, I think it might suit us, but for us to win it, I think Pádraig Welsh and possibly Richie Hogan will have to have a bearing on the thing. I don't think we have enough of consistency in what we've had up to now. And we're going back to the well, some might think, but sometimes going back to the well, you see it at all sports, you see it in the tennis at the minute, Nadal, you see it in the soccer, you see it in the hurling. Sometimes your age doesn't matter.
Your age doesn't matter, and I'm going to talk against what I'm after saying a minute ago. When you see no doubt about his talent. But when you see Richie Hogan's name coming so strongly here, and that he is 35 years, if you want to look at the can from the other side, is it, no doubting his ability, but is it a reflection on the Kilkenny, the rest of the Kilkenny panel?
Pretenders, yeah.
The young pretenders that Cody doesn't think that they're up to it. I know he has his way played on, but a good 25-year-old would probably last longer, but maybe not do as much damage as a good 35-year-old. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
And again, no, I do, of course, and that's why, again, for some strange reason, Kilkenny are allowing things to happen out of the group this year, allowing rumours to come out all year, and they've spun us all down a different track. And I don't know, has it been cleverly orchestrated? And I don't know, is this whole Richie Hogan thing just a decoy for the likes of Owen Cody, who's supposed to be flying it the last 2 weeks? Now, if you remember Owen Cody, of course you do, the hurler of the year the last 2 years, young hurler of the year,
young as well,
21, 22. He has been quiet in the last 3-4 months. He's been quiet in the last 3 or 4 matches. And if he's going as well as he is, well, maybe Cody is deflecting all the rumour out about Richie Hogan. Maybe he's deflecting the whole thing, and maybe we're all fools here to take the pressure off of Cody and these guys. So you're right. But again, I keep going back to it. You can have all the young lads you like, and we do have them. There is an uncertainty in the Kilkenny camp. There is a lack of trust in all the guys together. And even the players themselves, the group, the people around the camp, the people with maybe outside the camp. We all have I'm going back to it. You think I was related to them in my neighbouring club. I just think that Pádraig Welsh has to have an influence on this game, and a positive one for Kilkenny to win. Kilkenny to win.
And Adrian, we know where you're going at that. Adrian, before we let you go, there's the small matter of the second semi-final tomorrow between Galway and Limerick. King Henry in charge of Galway. Can they cause an upset and knock Limerick out of the championship, Adrian?
Sure, it's very unlikely based on everyone's on the form so far. They've been too inconsistent. Galway, as much as I'd love to see him winning for Henry's sake, and Richie O'Neill, who's coaching him, Richie, I can see him from my window here. He lives across the field here. He's hurling involved with us. They're going well. They're quietly happy. They need to take their chances. They need to be obviously more consistent. Their six backs will be very good, but they're not getting the scores on the far end, and they're not turning them into scores. Hey, Henry's involved. He's a winner. He might have a plan, but it just might be a step too far based on form at the minute. Limerick are just too strong. They're coming back with a full complement of players. And one thing about Limerick, not only do they maybe not have a love for the likes of Yee, but they definitely hate this group of Kilkenny players, so they're busting to get one of us. So I think that alone is going to drive the Limerick lads. They don't mind which one of us they play in the final, because they'll equally dislike us both on the day when it comes to it. So for me, it's Limerick.
Yeah, and indeed, Adrian, with that, we're going to take thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us here on Scariff Bay Community Radio. Look, whoever win, may the best team win later on today in Croke Park, or whether it is Clare and Kilkenny, we'll wish them the very best looking down at Ireland final. Obviously, up here, we'll be hoping for a Clare win. But once again, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us, Adrian.
Oh, well, best of luck, lads. Thank you.
And once again, thanks to Adrian Ronan taking the time to talk to us. And now we move from Kilkenny, and we're going to get the views of the Galway public on this All-Ireland semi-final as they take Limerick on tomorrow in Croke Park. And we're joined by men who's always very good to us here on Scariff Bay Community Radio, former Galway hurler, Andy Cohen. Andy, you're welcome once again.
Thanks very much, guys. It's unfortunately the weeks are drawn to a close now with our championship. We can kind of see the end in sight, even though it's only heading into July this week. But the time is passing by. Like we're talking about semi-finals already.
And we haven't got a warm day yet.
Yeah, we actually spoke about it a good bit during the week, and I was talking to a lot of lads, and you'd always get the summer holidays out of it, and lads would be just back to school when the All-Ireland final would either be on or to be on the following Sunday.
Bit of crack at the Galway races if you were in the semi-final as well, wouldn't you?
It's going to leave an awful bite, Andy, though, isn't it? I know the club hurling beyond, but it just doesn't seem right.
No, it doesn't. No, you're dead right. And those kind of milestones there, especially here in Galway, the races always coincided with an All-Ireland quarter-final. And it normally ends up being on the Sunday before the races start on the Monday, and it was either glory or doom and gloom on that Monday. And then, like you said, then about that first weekend in September, you were always back to school, and you were always that Sunday night coming down from Croke Park was always gloomy night, because you knew you were heading into the winter, then it was all over at that point.
Look at Galway are heading into the semi-final, Andy, and look at a mammoth task. There's no doubt you can't brush it up any other way, taking on reigning All-Ireland champions Limerick. Yeah,
look at it's if I was asked to describe the mood here in Galway, it's not overly optimistic, really. We know that they have a free swipe here now at Limerick. As such, they're under no pressure because Limerick are heading for 3 in a row, and they really want that 3 in a row, because considering they had such a famine since 1973 to 2018, and now that they're making hay, I guess they really, really want to keep pushing on. So I suppose the pressure is on Limerick in a way, and with Galway, if we can just kind of relax and just really have a right go at them, we might, if there's some gods looking at us, we might get a result, but probably unlikely, I would say.
But Andy, people will always say Galway can always produce the unexpected when least expected, I suppose, to put it one way. They've turned out in semi-final wins before when it wasn't expected of them. Okay, the loss of Gerard McInerney centre-back, a huge loss to Galway. I know they've covered there, but, they need everything to go right, Andy.
Oh, they do for sure. They've had some great surprises over going back a good while now, I suppose, where they really churned out victories where there was in the build-up they had no hope. But I just kind of think we were talking during the week here, and we were kind of saying that maybe if you looked at the Clare-Limerick Munster final, and you would say that Clare were really, really, they could have beaten Limerick on the day. But then when you seen Clare against Wexford, you thought, geez, they haven't the hope of getting out of this up to half time. So we were kind of flipping that over and kind of thinking from a Galway side that, okay, they just about got away from Cork, but if for one day they did turn up and they all hurled out of their skins and really had a go at it, you just don't know what could happen either. But on the surface of it, looking at the strength that Limerick have, the potential that they have to come back in, it really would be a big ask.
Correct, Andy, and we all agree with you on that one. And nevertheless, in the back of our minds, we're saying, okay, take the Henry Shefflin factor. He has such experience in Croke Park as a player and as a manager of Ballyhale, and he's a winner, a born winner. He was surely instilling the players over the last couple of weeks this thing that, look, no matter who you're playing in Croke Park, there's always a chance of winning. He'll have a driven. And he may have maybe hatched a few little plans about maybe, how to take on Limerick, especially up front for Galway. So, there's always that Henry factor that he might just get the most of real lads and get that all lads playing well together the one day.
Exactly, and the Leinster final is a perfect example of that, where Galway got caught by typical Kilkenny, just kind of determination, and all of that as well. And outside of all that, I mean, the whole occasion of going to Croke Park, the big days, like you said, Shefflin has been through them more than we could ever dream of, and he knows the approach, he knows the way he should be thinking, and like I say, he definitely has good ways, I would say, of getting across to those players to get them in tune, and I'm sure he hopefully has a couple of plans up his sleeve as well too for try and pinpoint Limerick in certain areas. And
to get down to the specifics, Andy, the Galway lineup, do you think will change much from the day against Cork? I know it's enforced with McInerney gone, of course. Probably we were agreeing there that Joseph Cooney might go back there. But overall, do you think there'll be much changes in the team apart from the enforced one?
No, I think, and I guess we definitely going to miss Gareth McInerney's physicality the next day. But you're probably looking at something like maybe Joseph Cooney coming back to the half-back line again in some position. It could be 6 or it could be on the wing. Ronan then started in the half-forward line the last day. He'll probably more than likely come back to midfield, and Brian Glencannon, he probably will start. I'd say he'll slot back in there in the half-forward line or even on the inside line. So I suppose there's not really much major changes to it. A lot of the guys are personnel that's been there over all the games so far this year. There's not really too many surprises to come from the bench. Jason Flynn came on the last day. He was okay in spots, so it's hard to know. It's hard to see them really making any major changes. It would just be a little bit of surgery on the team itself, but no major changes.
Yeah, and I suppose Andy, look at Limerick will have their probably go with to try and test it, but their bench is going to be much stronger than it has been. There has been question marks asked about the Limerick bench, but definitely the addition of Cian Lynch, who we're expecting to be tugging, Peter Casey, who we're expecting to tug. Not too sure what role Barry Murphy will have, but their 3 huge additions to any panel.
Exactly. I mean, and the talk is all of Keane Lynch, but like Peter Casey, he scored 5 points in the All-Ireland final last year before he went off with his knee. So I mean,
so he was probably in player of the year for him maybe at the time.
Absolutely. You think you're worried about Keane Lynch and you think Peter Casey rocks out there, or you could have Aaron Gillan watch for 55-60 minutes of the game on Sunday, and next thing Peter Casey comes out to you, and the strength and depth alone is just, it's frightening if you actually thought about it too much. And kind of, I suppose, on paper, when you look at that, I suppose that's what's pointing the dial towards Limerick.
Yeah, indeed. Look, we hope that might be the case for Galway from the Galway point of view. Andy, later on today, there's the small matter of Clare and Kilkenny to see who will be playing either Galway or Limerick. What's your thought on this one, Andy? Is it one that's just too close to call?
It's very close to call. Very, very close. Because like the two of them, Clare have what they talk about. Kilkenny, Clare have that determination. They have doggedness. But they're a very, very good team as well too. And I suppose you could say it revolves around Tony Kelly, but you've got a lot more players now adding into that. You've got a very, very good bench with Rodgers, Meehan coming in there adding to that team as well. Like, so I suppose Kilkenny nearly let the hat out of the bag a small bit with Galway, before they kind of lost that element of surprise now. That will kind of really warn Clare heading into that game. So I think if Clare can kind of match them physically, which they shouldn't really have a problem with the likes of Fitzgerald and McInerney and that, I think kind of going down the stretch, I think Clare will have that little bit more firepower from kind of midfield up. So I definitely be calling Clare for that one.
And Andy, do you think the Croke Park factor will encourage Clare? You know, we've invariably played well up there, or, you know, it's more or less a home venue for Kilkenny at this stage. Do you think that will have any bearing on the game, Andy?
Well, I think a big bearing on it is that this time Brian Ronan is driving them now. They're back in Croke Park again, I suppose, into a semi-final. They probably a lot of regrets after that semi-final in 2019. So I would say with Brian Ronan at the wheel now, I would say that Croke Park element now, I think they're going to take their chances that little bit more. They're going to seize the day that bit more, that they're back there again. So I just kind of think that Kilkenny they kind of know what's going to come down the tracks, but I think that they're going to want it that little bit more because they're finally back there again. Yeah,
and Andy, at the end of the day, you know, you who you officially tipping to get the All-Ireland hurling final of 2022.
Well, look, my dream final always was since I was watching in '95. After, I suppose, since I wanted revenge really since that semi-final in '95. I suppose in an ideal world as we go away in Clare, I'd be hoping, but I'm kind of tilting towards it'll be Clare Limerick round 3. I think really in the Ireland final, I can't really see bar a miracle really for Galway and Clare. I think just having that little bit too much for Kilkenny. I'm looking at probably a Limerick Clare final.
Andy, with that, we're going to take our leave. You're very good to talk to us here on Scariff Bay Community Radio once again, and hopefully, all going well, we'd love to be talking to you again in 2 weeks' time, exactly, with a Clare Galway pairing in the All-Ireland final.
Hopefully, guys. I'll hopefully have a lot of homework ready for that.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, yeah.
Andy Cohen, as always, Gormila Margot.
Slán, Andy.
Thanks very much, guys. Slán, good morning.
And once again, thanks to Andy Cohen. Pat, finally, I didn't get your view. Who do you think is going to be the All-Ireland senior hurling final pairing after the weekend?
I have to agree with Andy. I think Clare and Limerick for round 3, as you said. I believe Clare are good enough to beat Kilkenny, but we're all aware of the pitfalls, and I have my own fears. And I think anytime we play Kilkenny at the top 3 teams, Leo, you know, and all Clare hurling forwards have their own fears of those cats, those Cork lads, or those Dip lads from decades and decades of it. But I think we're good enough to beat Kilkenny. I just like the way Lohan has us going. I think Galway will give Limerick a rattle, but Limerick will win the game towards the end with the bench and with forwards they have.
Pat, there's a small matter tomorrow of an All-Ireland minor hurling final. You know, unfortunately Clare are not taking part, defeated by Offaly in the semi-final. It's Offaly and Tipperary, you know, 2 neighbouring counties. Yeah. Offaly in their first final since 1989. You know, Tipperary been there a few times since. Quick word on this one, Pat. Who do you think will be the All-Ireland minor under-17 champions or minor champions come down in Northern Park tomorrow?
Well, first of all, it has the makings of a classic. I think you have 2 fabulous teams. The Offaly team now, you know, the Offaly lads, after been maybe 6, 7, 8 years at underage and development level, have got up to this stage now, and I think they have a smashing team, Leo. I saw them when they beat Laois, obviously I saw them when they beat Clare, and they have some fabulous players. Particularly the long-range scoring is unbelievable. Their touch, and they're a little like, there isn't as much obviously ground hurler or first time hurler like the old Offaly team, but the touch and the quick delivery
and very little messing with
The
the
old
ball.
characters.
It's still there.
They're all
They're
characters.
good, yeah, and they have some fabulous long range
And your
strikers.
man Ravenhill, what a captain.
What a
long
captain
range
he is,
shooter,
yeah.
And Screedy.
And he's not from East Belfast, where the pitch is, but and Martin around the middle there as well. And sure, the father was a great wing back. Tip, obviously, brilliant win against Galway in the semi-final in a classic game, and I suppose we a couple of outstanding players. Tom Delaney comes to mind. You mentioned about him yourself. He's a super young star, and let's hope for his sake he has a he'll continue hurling as well with Tip into the future, because Tip could use good lads like that and be great for himself as well. But a classic game could be in store here. Neighbouring counties, obviously. I'd be hoping awfully, I suppose, even though we had our own issues with Offaly before in the past in '98 and all that. That's history. I think it's good to have Offaly coming again strong to make Leinster hurling strong. And I mean, you have to admire the way they play hurling. So I think that young team they have is fabulous. They're very confident as well, but I think they might just have enough. But look, it could be 50-50 game, and if Tip win, it won't be a surprise or a shock. But I just fancy Offaly slightly.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Pat. And that concludes our Sportsline show here this weekend on Scariff Bay Community Radio in association with their Credit Union on 88.3 and 92.7 FM. My thanks, as always, co-presenter Pat McNamara. Thanks to our guest, to Matthew McMahon, Adrian Ronan and Andy Cohn. Thanks also to the men in the control tower, is Jim Collins. Without him we wouldn't have a show. And thanks to you for joining us here on Scariff Bay Community Radio today here for Sportsline. And we wish the Clare Hurlers all the very best of luck in Croke Park later on this evening. And we'd like to wish all the people travelling to the game who are listening to us here a safe journey, and hopefully enjoy the game. And we hopefully come 6 o'clock this evening or whatever, or later on, whatever, half 7, that we're looking forward to an All-Ireland final in 2 weeks' time. So all that remains is for me, Leo Dial. It's Bannock Day, August Lawn.